right. There you go. All right. Welcome to the kickoff meeting for the Stabilization Brigade, formerly known as the trying to get Volta to Production Brigade. Hopefully we'll be successful. The life of brigades targeted to be, I'll call it short or at least terminated at some point. It's not meant to be an ongoing activity that goes on forever, although I hope that some of the best practices that we learn and create during this brigade do roll into the development of Volta, potentially other projects. I'm hoping that will mean that we won't need another brigade 6 months from now to do the same thing. I'm hoping that we can get to a process where the code that comes out is just generally ready for production. So that being said, any general questions before we go through the agenda, which should be showing and sharing on my screen?
For some reason.
Pardon?
No, and the agenda and log, it will be rolling update on the Google Doc, right? So.
The agenda is, oh yes, I will be doing that as we decide on a cadence for these meetings. I'll try to keep the agenda up to date on Google Docs, whether it's one document that just rolls or multiple documents. I haven't decided yet, or we haven't decided yet. But both the agenda and notes from the meeting should be on that Google Doc shared folder.
I mean, sorry, this is your meeting, but several names showing up on the screen I'm not familiar with the Volta community, so I don't know whether we at some point we should spend some time to introduce each other and let everybody know who they are. Do you think that would be good?
Yep, that was going to become part of the brigade participants, is kind of go around the room, introduce who you are, and if you're going to be participating in the brigade. So absolutely. You see, I do have a window on my screen. I don't know if it's shared with you as well, with the 14 participants in the meeting room right now. Is that the window you see?
I opened my own.
Okay. So I was trying to figure out how best to go around the room so that we can, people just don't start shouting out. So let's, I guess, again, I'm David Bainbridge. I'm from Siena. I will be leading the brigade. So that is who I am. I have a call-in user from 916-952-0621. Do we know who that person is?
Yeah, hey David, this is Kailash. I'm from ONF. I'll also be participating in this brigade. Glad we're getting this going.
All right. Thank you. Sean?
I'm Sean Yin from AT&T, mostly on the product owner, co-owner with Bjorn. I don't contribute code. I just talk.
Okay. Bjorn?
Yeah, I'm Björn from Deutsche Telekom, and yeah, a little bit the same as Sean. So I'm here from the operator side to be sure that the result of the brigade is really usable from our perspective. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to contribute code for that. But maybe I'm able to assign resources for testing, for contributing, or something like that.
Having the power to assign resources is a great power to have. Julie?
Hi, Julie Lorenzen from AT&T. I am the Scrum Master for Volta, and will be participating just as an observer role here. No code contribution for me.
Okay. Thomas Moore?
Hello, Thomas Moore from AT&T. Similar to Sean and Julie, I'm involved from an operator perspective, and I've contributed some requirements in the past, and it's probably where my support will mainly lie.
And I apologize if I do mispronounce some of these. A. Zacchetti.
Angelo, sorry. The last name is my surname. It's very difficult because it is an Italian surname, typical. Okay, sorry. I'm a consultant. I work for Reply, and I'm a consultant about Volta governance and management for Deutsche Telekom. I work in Darmstadt and also in Milan about the testing above all. Prego. Francesco. Francesco is with me. Francesco
Malivindi. I'm working like a consultant for Reply. And this moment, I'm just following the test for the Volta in Deutsche Telekom.
Okay. Ashwaya.
Antonio
Yeah,
Marchetta.
sorry, I was in mute. Antonio Marchetta, technical team lead for Volta in the effort project for Deutsche Telekom. I'm from Reply, and like Angelo and Francesco, I'm a consultant.
Fahid.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I'm Fahed Al-Koza. I'm joining from Furukawa Electric, and we've been involved in actually opening some issues and bringing some fixes to Volta 2.0, and I'm very interested in seeing how this brigade will go, and will probably contribute even more.
All right, Scott.
Yeah, I'm Scott Baker from ONF. I do expect I will probably be tasked to contribute code with this. I don't know exactly on what aspects yet, but we'll figure that out.
All right, Sarav.
Hi, I'm Saurav from ONF. Thank you.
It's early.
Everybody knows Sarav.
It's early on the Pacific Coast. If you get your name out, that's good enough. Shirkant?
Hi, my name is Sarkant. I'm working for Netsia. Hopefully I can contribute some code. We'll see.
Okay. I'm going to spell this one because ZDRAVKO.
Zdravko Bozakov. Hi. I'm from Radisys, and I'm working from the BB sim side in order to test the scalability of Volta, also together with DT. So yeah, this is why I'm interested in seeing what's the plan here.
Okay. Zach.
Zach Williams, ONF. Yeah, I work on SIBA, and I've been helping with some of the Volta CI/CD stuff. So, thank you.
Yep. Sean Missett. Oh, Sean just went away. Must be having problems. All right. Did I miss anyone? Oh, Andy.
Yeah, you missed me as well.
So I'm Andy Bevere. I work at ONF, mainly on SIBA, a little bit on Volta, especially PONSIM.
All right. Angelo. Keep Angelo.
Okay, no, Angelo and Francesco already presented before, just I already introduced it before. I've just renamed myself because I'm not another people, the same as before, sorry.
David, I think Ashwaya, can you talk?
Hi, yes. Hi all. I'm Aishwarya Rana from AT&T, and I work as software developer and hopefully to contribute to Volta.
And then, yep, Kirill, is that correct?
Kirill, yes. Hi, my name is Kirill Seichenko. I'm I'm part of Reply as well, and looking at kind of working closely with Volta team, but also looking at productization for A4. But the reason I've joined this meeting is because Deutsche Telekom would like to offer support, organizational mainly. I can't do code, unfortunately. But David, for your support, basically in my own capacity, my humble capacity, hopefully I can help overlook things and drive this initiative forward and take some workload off your shoulders. Yep, that's me.
Excellent, thanks. I think that's everybody. If not, please speak up now. Okay. What I'd like to do as part of this meeting is, if you're going to be a kind of an official Brigade participant, which means, what do I want to say, contributing resources to the actual Brigade versus kind of watching the Brigade. What I'm going to ask you to do is send me an email, or actually, I don't know if you guys can edit this document or not. If you can, just put your name and affiliation in the document. I don't know if someone can try that, so that we can get a official list of Brigade participants. And these, again, are people that are going to be contributing resources, and we're hoping to get, and I think, I don't know, Sean, did you actually send out invites to specific people to ask them to participate in the Brigade?
I sent an invite to the minimal list, Sarav, and when I was working out. So I did send the invite to those people directly.
Okay. So, yep. Hey, thanks, Scott. So if you're going to be contributing, please put your name in the document, just so we can keep track of those resources or people participating. Again, people are more than welcome just to kind of observe and look as well. Just trying to get kind of an official list of those people that are going to help out.
David, could you post the link to this document in chat maybe to everyone?
Certainly.
I posted it.
Right.
And I changed the permissions, so people should be able to add it or changes.
Thank you, Zach. Okay. We'll let that continue during the meeting, going on there. One of the biggest items I think we have to decide is, what is the Brigade going to do? What is the statement of work? And along that, what is the minimal viable product that we are going to stabilize? There was a minimal viable product that was proposed at kind of a get-together, I'll call it, at the ONF building in Menlo. And that you can see down here at the bottom of the agenda. There is, generally it becomes trying to get Volta 2.x to compatibility at some level with 1.7 minus some key features. Like I think we left technology profiles out, is that right? Or multi-TCON out at least. And then get it to a point where it is what I've termed production ready. I think that's more than just kind of stabilization, production ready. But from my perspective, what it means is things are consistent, repeatable. Failures, when they happen, they are recoverable to some extent, or at least there's a plan to recover them. We are able to get to a point where Volta is supportable in a production environment and has some level of scale. What I mean by some level of scale is that even if it supports only 2 OLTs, each OLT having only 16 ONUs, that's a known scale. I'm not saying it has to scale infinitely, but we have to be able to characterize what it will support. The target in terms of data path that we're looking at is just basically high-speed internet access, HISA. We're not looking to support multicast in particular. So it is kind of a base level support. And another aspect of this, at least from my perspective, is the ability to have documentation, both in terms of developer documentation as well as operator documentation. I also firmly believe that there's got to be some level of HA as part of a product that's going to be in production, where HA, it can be loosely interpreted to mean, hey, if a container fails, it will restart and the system will reconnect. So when I say HA in this context, I do not mean that we'll have necessarily a 5.9 uptime, although that would be nice. Do we want to go over these lists? Are there any items on this list that people want to call out or have questions about?
Of course. Björn here. So on point 4, you mentioned Volta 1.7 parity. So I suppose we are talking about stabilization of a Volta 2.x branch. That's
Yes.
I'm right on that? Okay. So, and then from the operator perspective, so what we are interested in, of course, we are talked about productization. So we need, we are absolutely interested and support the activity of a stable branch of Volta. But of course, that has to incorporate at least the minimum feature set we need to be able to productization. So therefore, our target would be to stabilize the 2.1 branch. That's our proposal, because from DT perspective, the 2.1 branch would incorporate all the features and functionalities we need for our FTTH workflow. Therefore, we propose to take this one and that from that list here, that would include, because there's a question mark after that, that would include a certain TCON and Gemport setup, but that's quite similar to the AT&T workflow. So if that would be focused, we are pretty fine for that. All the other things I fully support. And one thing I have in mind is you mentioned the scalability. Of course, that's not a scalability brigade. We are aware of that. But yeah, in terms of being stable and reproduce and have reproducible status and all these things, we should clearly define what we understand. Also in terms of scalability, what we understand on the stable version. So you mentioned two OLTs and 16 ONUs. So maybe others have other proposals, but at the end of the day, we should agree on a certain maximum setup. Also to have the test setups in a more or less equal fashion to be able to have scenarios reproducible, use cases reproducible, and all these things. So,
Okay.
but that's my comments so far.
All right, thanks. So when you say require multiple TCONs and Genports, does that mean we're including the technology profile implementation in the 2.1 tree?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
And I think the David, that's the reason why we mentioned it's 1.7 parity, right? So 1.7 has a technology profile and media band as part of the scope.
Okay. There's a what do I want to say, issue with getting 1.7 parity, in my perspective, in terms of stabilization. That means, how do you do a stabilization of a product that is not yet implemented? And so while tech profile and these other things are implemented on 1.7, they're not on the 2x train. Other things aren't yet implemented in the 2x train
David,
either.
this is sort of, my understanding was that when Radisys was developing the Golang-based version of the OpenOLT adapter, they were doing it obviously from scratch, right? Because it's in Golang.
Yep.
And they were incorporating tech profiles right from the beginning based on the learnings of the tech profile brigade, which was working on 1.7. So we have some key people who are missing on this call. And I really wanted them on because it's difficult to have this discussion without them. Like, for example, Girish from Radisys is missing. So is Ken from Sienna. So is Matt from AT&T. And these are three people who are really a must on this discussion. Okay, so let's make the best of what we have right now. Can anyone from Radisys fill in and tell us exactly how much of the tech profile work that was done in 1.7 was ported into 2.0 or 2.1 using the Golang adapter?
Hey, this is Sean. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I'll sync up with Amit and Girish. I mean, I know they're implementing. I'm not sure exactly how far along it is. But I guess that would mean that we need to. I guess as being stated, 2.1 branch would include the where we are with the Golang implementation on the adapter. And there was also some work that was done in the core as well to support the meter bands and the flow decomposition work, right? So I think some of that was also taken up by Radisys, but let me check into that. I'll next time we have a meeting, I'll make sure Girish and maybe Amit are available as well.
Right, and the reason is
Saurav,
yes.
If we can stay tuned for a couple of minutes, so I'm motivated Amit to join.
Okay.
He's sitting next to me, and I asked him to join, so maybe he will go in in a couple of seconds.
Thanks.
Thanks,
I'm trying to impress David into understanding why this is important. So the way 1.7 works is that if you don't incorporate a tech profile that is defined and loaded into etcd, Volta uses this sort of inbuilt tech profile, right? A default tech profile that's kind of hard-coded into Volta 1.7, because the fact is that you can't live without these things. For the pond to work, you have to do something, right? You have to create gems, you have to create a decon, you have to create the scheduling upstream and downstream. And the inbuilt one does the minimum work, and you can't change it, right? I mean, when you're trying to deploy Volta, if you don't specify these things, if you don't have a way to specify these things and pick them up from etcd, then it uses the inbuilt one, which does the minimum, which probably won't work for anyone. So the need to specify something in etcd which can be picked up, for example, what I did in the demo yesterday had 1 tcont and 4 gem ports, right? And you can't do that with the inbuilt one. The inbuilt one does 1 tcont and a single gem port. Okay?
Right.
So
I'm not disagreeing with the value of the tech profiles work. I'm not disagreeing that it needs to be done. My concern is it's hard to stabilize something that isn't yet built or complete. And so how much work can you do around stabilization of a feature that is still in development? I think it limits the kind of stabilization you can do. And that, by necessity, lengthens the period of the brigade. Because while you can do some testing while it's being implemented, you can't say it's completely stable till after it's completely implemented and tested and everything else. And so...
hi, this is Amit Jani. Sorry.
Does that make sense, Sarav, what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, I see what you're hearing. I'm sorry. I hear what you're saying. It is too early in the... I'm desperately trying to make some coffee so I can... Anyway, yeah, so I understand what you're saying, but let's hear from Amit and see where we are with that on that.
Sorry, can you... Yeah. So, so on the tech profile and meter profiles thing, there are a bunch of guys from Radisys who are working on that. And last I had checked with them, that was sometime last week, and the timeline that I got from them is early next week, they should be submitting all these changes up for review. And depending on how much time we take for the review, it should get merged. So when we say all these changes, basically that is to bring it to par with what we have currently within 1.7.
Oh, okay. That's actually good news.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it is very good news. And so early next week is great. That's technically when the brigade is still ramping up. So
yep.
So David, I think it should be all right.
Yep.
Yeah. So
no,
I
agree.
think we should have most of the meat of the code in there. But I wouldn't say that it would be very solid, given that they are working on a fast-paced mode. But I think we should be able to start off from there.
Will it be feature complete at that point with this check-in, or, I understand not necessarily solid, but will it be feature complete?
Yeah. From a feature perspective, it should be everything. But anyways, if we are leaving out something, I would make sure that we highlight it very clearly and not try to push in big blocks as bugs later on. So if something is not there, we would highlight it.
Okay.
Does that include the core changes as well?
It must, right? It must, because back in 1.7, we kind of avoided the core, right, and went directly to the adapter. You can't do that anymore in 2.0. So as a result, there has to be core changes as well, at least in the flow handling, to implement this. Did that make sense, Sean?
It makes sense, but I didn't.
Yeah, I was just asking Amit if that did include those changes, because we kind of need those, right?
Yes, Sean, that's my understanding. So those guys are doing the changes also in the code, but once Ken is back, right, he would have to do those reviews and judge whether those changes are as per his liking, or if we need to do some rework on those.
Yeah. I think I remember Abhilash was taking up some stories there. Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Do you know if this code patch sets will include unit tests, those type of things, along with this, integration tests along with the code?
So on the Golang OpenOLT adapter, right? So right now there are no unit tests that are available. So and this patch set will not include anything in that regard. But on a different thread, we are trying to start writing unit tests for the entire Golang OpenOLT adapter. And that we hope to start, I can't give an exact timeline, but in the near future, maybe in the next 1 or 2 weeks.
Okay.
And Sarah, I think Netsia did some changes on the Onos app side. So is that also will be brought in, or as soon as we pick the right Onos version, then that will be automatically in there?
Yeah, it'll all be automatically in there if you use Onos 139. That's what the CBER release uses. And so, yeah, it should all be there.
Okay. Okay, that's actually good news to hear that the tech profile is that close to being in 2.x or 2.1. I was definitely of the belief that it was not that close.
Yeah, I mean, even in 1.7, there are, you can say, missing features in the sense that you can't change a tech profile. You can't, at least I haven't tried putting in multiple tech profiles. So there are these things that we don't need to maybe worry about immediately. But to get the basic ability to specify a tech profile and have that be executed, I think it's a must, yeah.
All right, any other comments then on this MVP kind of proposal?
One of the things that you mentioned in there was finalization and prioritization.
Yep.
I took an eye at this in terms of what would you want to have done first for the priority aspect to increase velocity of the overall process. And what I was thinking, if you look at numbers 1 and 6, those are all operational concerns about devices coming up and being recognized, and then being able to add and remove and reboot things. From a testing perspective, being able to do that, especially in when you're testing like multiple versions of code and just for robustness, I think those are pretty far up there on the getting the code to the point where you can test against real hardware and do basic operations. And then following after that, 7 and 2 are authorizing and deauthorizing, and then EA pool and DHCP. Those would kind of be needed probably for any data plane level testing. So I'm wondering if we're looking at what to work on first, if prioritizing 1 and 6 and then 2 and 7 would be the right place to get people, or just to make it so that we could do better testing of the overall system.
No, that makes sense to me. Some of this would be nice if it just worked, right? And so when these items, some of these are just, we need to verify that they exist, like EA pool DCP should be functioning. If not, then yes, it needs to be worked on. Coming up consistently should be functioning, but yes, if it's not, it needs to be worked on. So I would tend to agree with that. Anybody else have opinions on that? All right.
So maybe not an opinion, but a question, and perhaps one aimed at Sarov. At what point do we migrate CIBA to be able to use Volta 2.x so we can use our existing CIBA implementation as a way to test Volta? Are all of the tests that we're going to be doing here independent of CIBA, or should we leverage what we have in CIBA as a way to test and validate that these features work?
Yeah, I think Volta needs its Volta and ONAS combination without the rest of CIBA. I think it needs its own test suite, to be honest. CIBA test suites assume that you have more pieces in there. And while we can work on that on the background, the majority of folks don't typically test with the whole SIBA infrastructure. So in Volta, we started incorporating some tests, and I think we need to we need to add more to that. That's my personal opinion, but I'm willing to hear other thoughts.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Get this working first before the greater integration effort into SIBA.
I mean, the way I look at it is that if we get this to work, it should almost be a drop-in replacement into SIBA. But I wouldn't start with SIBA and worrying about I wouldn't start with that. I would think just on a Volta and on OS level, if you can get the tests to work and prove that these things work, the integration into SIBA can come later and should be a lot easier.
I tend to agree with that as well. It does mean that there are capabilities that SIBA does right now that have to be somehow implemented in that test suite, such as authorizing a subscriber, pushing that into ONUS via curl or whatever. But I think keeping focus kind of on the Volta thing is probably the right move. All right. Any other comments on that?
So David, the Northforge made the presentation yesterday for the A test, right? So that will be sort of in line with this testing. Is that correct?
I believe it is. Yes. I believe.
So what? Yeah, we do need that test plan extended, and I'm not.
Yeah,
I didn't.
We also need to add.
Go ahead.
I think that Kailash was trying to talk. Kailash.
Sounds like he's in a car, so maybe he needs to concentrate on that.
Yeah. So basically, I think what I missed the call yesterday that Sean was referring to, but I was wondering if there was a test plan that was presented.
The test plan was basically the same test cases as in 1.x, so including like ONT, enable, disable things like that.
No, there were. I mean, as far as I know, in 1.7, the A tests, there are about 3 of them.
Yeah, there were only 3 or 4 that he talked about yesterday as well.
Yeah, I'm talking about more like having 30 tests. Right?
Yeah.
So,
I agree. I think what was presented yesterday by Northforge in terms of a test plan is necessary but not sufficient in terms of testing. But I do believe it's in line where we're trying to go. We need more test cases. We need test cases that test the full life cycle of subscribers. We need test cases, kind of the chaos monkey, so we can see what happens in different failure scenarios. All right.
Sorry, guys. Do you intend to create a page to populate the tests? I mean, we are talking about a specific test plan for this brigade, right?
Yes.
Where do you intend to put? I think Furukawa can help to populate the test case there.
What I'll do is go here. Oops. Let's create this in Google Doc. And what we can do is we can start capturing and I'll create that after this meeting and forward that out. Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, before we go too far off of that, anything else on the MVP then? Let me go through and I did, is this required? Yes, required. We still, needs to be probably expanded. I'm going to say, unless there's any objections here, I'm going to include HA. All right. Leave it at that then. Moving on. Development issues. We got 15 minutes left, so hopefully this might be the larger section of what's left. Development issues, new code versus bug fixes. We talked a little bit about this in terms of the tech profiles. It's important that we understand what code is not yet part of the 2.1 tree that needs to be part of the 2.1 tree. And why I say that is particular code that is probably larger patch sets and definitely needs to also be in the master as well as any stabilization branch. So what we had talked about, Sarav had mentioned, I can't remember what meeting it was, the process of development around the stabilization brigade was to create a stabilization branch and then patches that drive stabilization are put into that branch, and then periodically that branch is merged into master. Either that, or as people create patch sets against the stabilization branch, they also bring those patch sets into the master branch, essentially a double patch. So, and that's fine, and that I think works for bug fixes. I'm not sure how well that works for large patch sets or new feature development. And I do have a concern that there's divergence between, well, someone threw a table in, divergence between the stabilization branch and master that make it difficult for those double edits.
Hey David, this is Manuel here. Sorry, joined a bit late, but Bjorn is also on, of course.
Yep.
But just a question from a let's say latecomer here. I was supposing that the stabilization branch doesn't receive any feature upgrades, right? So by definition, that would be just bug fixes. So when you say larger patch sets, are you then talking about sort of I don't know, like discovered gaps that still make the I mean, they don't add features but need some like substantial rewrites or something like that?
So both substantial rewrites based on a discovery, but also things, I'll use this example, the patch sets are coming next week, right? If we had a stabilization branch today, what would we do with the tech profile patch sets that are meant to be submitted early next week? Right? Those are features, so they're not just bug fixes. So
okay, but wouldn't that speak in favor of not creating the stabilization branch before we at least got some feature stability?
I would agree that at somewhat, because the real question is, when is the features or new code, I'll call it, can we call 2.1 feature complete, and is it at that point that we create the stabilization branch for bug fixes? And if that's the case, is it significantly different than any normal release branch?
Yeah, I would think that we should understand from Redis what exactly is coming in to the patch next week, and at least hold on branching out the stabilization branch until that comes in and we understand what's in there and what's missing. That would at least give us enough to start with. Now, worrying about significant rewrites, let's worry about it when we come to it, because we don't, I mean, otherwise it's all hypothetical right now.
Yeah.
So,
and that's fine. I agree with that. Are there any other outstanding large features beyond the tech profile that we're expecting to be pulled into 2.1?
yeah, that's why we need to hear from the folks who have been working the most with 2.0. I really wish Matt was here. I really wish Ken and Girish were here. But who on the call has the most experience with 2.0? I really wish Mahir was here.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of deploying, I've deployed it a lot, just in test environments.
So when you say deployed it a lot in test environments, what do you do after deploying it?
I haven't got the data plane up and running yet. So it really it's getting the containers up and connected more than anything else, creating some simulated devices, that type of thing.
No, so who
but
else
it's
on the
not
call?
testing the real feature.
Yeah, who else on the call has the most experience with 2.0? Is it Amit? Is it someone else?
On this call.
There's Amit. So yeah, I personally have not yet played around with 2.0, but yeah, I know guys who have been working with 2.0 and know some of the problems that they have been facing. Yeah, that's up to it. Yeah, if we need, I can see if I can get Girish on the call right away. Maybe we can just try if he can join in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I mean, we have
Yeah,
10 minutes
let
on
me
the call,
just
but
try.
I don't mind going till late.
Let me see if he can join.
So I know there's potentially some affinity router rework that is being looked at to ease the deployment of that, if you will, as well as perhaps make it more stable. The OF agent is still in Python. So the question is 2.1 going to go out with that in Python or Go?
So, yeah, why would you want to change OF agent to Go?
There was, this was talked about, I think, in the meeting yesterday for Volta. Someone had taken on the task of rewriting OF agent in Go. I don't know its current status, but the question is then, is that part of 2.1? Why redo it in Go? Again, for all the reasons that we're redoing a lot of the components in Go.
Okay, who was that? Do you know? Anyone else?
It's Mark Olson from the what he staged in AT&T Foundry. But
Mark Olson? Okay.
Mark Olson, and he got distracted. I think he sent out a reply update. He will come back and work on this one.
Right. The other issue is, I believe the OpenONU, well, the OpenOLT has been converted to Go. The OpenONU has not, but maybe that's part of the other Radisys work that's going on.
So here's my 2 cents on it. Okay. If somebody wants to convert OF agent to Go, that's great. It's not a necessity, in my opinion, for the stabilization branch. And if you were really looking to convert things into Go, that could become a necessity much sooner. That would be the ONU adapter, like you mentioned, but more specifically, the OMCI library. That seems to be, so when we have done scaling stuff with Volta 1.7, more often than not, we get tripped up over there. But again, if you're looking at a scale of, a few dozen ONUs, it's not an issue. But if you're getting into closer to 100 ONUs, where we typically get tripped up is just being able to do all the OMCI messaging from in 1.7. So again, I don't think this is a scale brigade. It's a stabilization brigade for a minimum number of ONUs. So I think neither of these are really critical. But when we do look at scale eventually, more than the OF agent, it's probably going to be the OMCI library where we will need help.
So again, whether they're in or out of 2.1 is, I guess, relatively, we just need to know if they're going to be considered part of it, right?
Yeah, my opinion is it's out.
Okay. I would agree with that opinion, unless, of course, some of this work is near completion. If it's near completion, my opinion might change. Right? So if the OF agent is 2 weeks out from being complete, converted over, I might say, hey, let's include it. Same with OpenONU and OMCI library. If it's 6 months out, I would agree that it doesn't make sense.
So the thing is, we have plenty of concerns to deal with without bringing an OF agent, right? In all our testing with 1.7, the OF agent, we found maybe 1 or 2 bugs in there, right? So that OF agent has been used now for over a year. And you want to do this conversion, you can probably get the initial code in, right? But it'll be extra work in the stabilization brigade to try and root out the bugs in that one.
So again, if it's, I don't know its current status. If it's near completion, it might be worth it. I mean, I've seen connectivity bugs with the OF agent where in 2.x deployments where if you don't start it before you start ONOS, or you don't start ONOS before you start the OF agent, you don't get connectivity. So that's just an example. There's other things, different failure scenarios. The OF agent doesn't reconnect either to the core or ONOS. So there are bugs there that need to be addressed in the Python version. And again, if the Python, and this goes I'm not trying to focus on OF agent, this goes for any component. If it's 2 weeks out, and after that 2 weeks, we expect everything going forward with Volta to be using that new implementation, it might make sense to bring in a stabilization brigade, because I don't want to stabilize on the Python version of ONU if right after the stabilization brigade, everybody's going to be using the Go one. That's what I'm trying to get at. I don't want to focus on the stabilizing the Python version of OMCI library if right after the stabilization brigade ends, everybody goes to the Go one, because then the stabilization effort hasn't actually done anything. And that's my point. So if it's 6 months out, yeah, we can't stabilize on it yet. But if it's a week out, it might make sense.
Let's find out.
Yeah, Björn here. I would fully agree on that, and that's exactly what came into my mind. If we know, we also, of course, I know that's not a scalability brigade, but if we know that we have serious issues with the Python version of the OpenONU adapter in terms of that we are limited to 10 or 20 ONUs per OLT, then I'm not sure if it makes sense to stabilize that because, to have it in a deployable fashion, that's what we agreed at the very beginning. The focus is to have a stable deployable version, of course, for an initial setup, which not means hundreds of OLTs and thousands of ONUs, of course. But we have to have a reasonable number in mind, and reasonable from that perspective is probably not 10 or 20 ONUs only are connected to an OLT. So if we have strong concerns on that, we should really think about what it takes in terms of the timeline. If we focus on a different version of the adapter before we start to stabilize it. So that's just from an operator perspective.
Yeah, but this is still guesswork, right? Who has proven that OF agent is a scalability?
No, I'm not talking about OF agent. So I have really no issues with the OF agent. I was more concerned about your statement regarding the ONU adapter.
Yeah, and that's Manuel. And I think we on this one, particularly on the OMCI library and the MIP downloads, those things. I think there were some issues that I wouldn't say were for large scale, but even for initial scale, smaller scale deployments would maybe be an issue.
It sounds like there's performance issues around the OMCI library, less than scale issues.
Yeah, I think that
it
that
might
is
be just related to the fact that in 1.7, everything was done in this, the core thread, right? So if you're busy doing OMCI, you're literally doing nothing else. So it may well be that, okay, in 2.0, somebody needs to enlighten me if the OMCI library is still part of, where is it? How is the architecture look like in 2.0 regarding OMCI?
So, Sarab, we have Girish on the call. Girish, can you shed some light on that?
Actually, I joined midway. I somehow missed this. What is the context? I'm really sorry.
No, this is regarding the OpenONU adapter, right? So, so the concern is that whether the Python, as in it is in Python currently, is that going to become a bottleneck pretty quickly? So Saurabh's question is basically, what is the high-level architecture of it? Because in 1.x, when everything was together, it was one thread which was doing everything, right? With 2.0, when the OpenONU adapter is running in its own container, so what's like the threading model out there?
No, I think it is still single-threaded because it uses the twisted framework, which is essentially single-threaded. And when you are doing MIB uploads, to the scale, to the count of 700, 800 MEs, and doing MIB downloads, I think performance-wise, it is still going to be much slower compared to other modules which are written in Go and using the Go routine constructs and all that. I mean, if I just think today, I think it is going to be bottleneck, but I don't have concrete data points to prove that. But definitely that is something that we need to watch out for and really, extract out the performance numbers. But as of today, I think it's going to become the bottleneck.
Yeah, we should probably discuss whether the MIB upload part is actually that useful. Given there's a synchronization counter that can tell you if you're out of sync with the ONU, and plus specific events where you're out of sync, you need to go reset the MIB and reconfigure it again. It might be useful to think about not doing the MIB upload.
And also it is doing a lot of, I don't know the latest update, but at one point it was doing a lot of KV access, basically storing all these, MEs on the KV store. So that was also taking a lot of time. So we need to see, I'm a little out of touch on the current implementation. I need to check back on that.
I think in 1.7, we eliminated that, or at least we built it as an option, and we don't use that option. So every ME is not actually stored in etcd as far as I know. At least that's what, I mean, that was really slowing things down.
We're starting to see people drop off. It is at time. And well, we've got a lot left on the agenda. I do want to be respectful of the meeting box.
Sounds like we need a follow-up.
Yeah, definitely need a follow-up. There's going to be several people, including myself, out in PTO next week, but we'll figure out how to continue this next week in absence. Again, if this time slot works for most people, I know it's brutal for us in California. Can we take this time slot next week as well and continue this?
Can we go half an hour later? Start at 7.
I'll tell you what. I'll put it on the email thread starting the time, and we'll discuss. I'll put a couple time options there and see where people fall in. I mean, from my perspective, yeah, starting at 7 instead of 6:30 works, but I don't know about others.
Yeah, let's just put it on email and have a round of discussion and come up with this time slot.
Did you create a mailing list?
I did not. So real quick before you shut off communications, there is a Slack channel. For email, I'm just proposing, hey, use Volt to discuss. Just prefix it with Brigade Stabilization, so people can identify it that way, as opposed to a separate mailing list. I believe that's what other brigades have been doing.
Sounds good.
The only other thing is, please look at the existing jurors for Volta 2.x or 2.1 in general, or even 1.7. And if you find one that you believe needs to be included under the umbrella of stabilization, please add the stabilization label to it, and therefore we can search for it. And I'll put the meeting conversation about the next meeting slot to continue this on the email list, and we'll go from there. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. Particularly those who had to get up early for this. I'll post also the meeting notes. Well, I guess the meeting notes are in Google Doc. I'll post the video as soon as I can figure out how to get it public on YouTube, and we can go from there. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.